Hi, I am Kevin Quigley, and welcome to Tarot Off the Cuff. I picked up my first tarot deck in 1982 when I was 12 years old. I spent the summer giving readings to my friends and kind of freaking them out, and then I misplaced it. Maybe 15 years later, I picked up another tarot deck, and I've been reading professionally pretty much since then. Tarot reading for me is about building up a conversation. A conversation not just between myself and my client, but between our higher selves, so that we might bring down some information that might help make us a little bit more conscious and maybe even our lives a little bit better.
Hi here, everybody. Thank you for joining me at Tarot Off the Cuff. My name is Kevin Quigley. I've got the Light Seer's Tarot here. I'm giving it a quick shuffle, and I'll pull a card and see what we get. Okay, here we go. Okay. Major Arcana, we've got the Wheel. Now, isn't it interesting? I'm recording this video in early December. I just had a birthday in the middle of November, and I'm entering a wheel year. I remember my last wheel year from 10 years ago, and very quite distinctly. And this one, I hope, has as much change and wonder and good stuff in store for it. So one of the things that I look at for wheels, for me, the wheel follows the hermit, as most of us know. And the hermit is when we climb that mountain and go down into that cave. I call that the spiral inward, right? Where we start to take a deep look inward at who we really are. And the wheel I refer to as the spiral outward, where we exit the cave armed with this new self-knowledge and step out into the world and grow and expand and take chances and move and all of that sort of stuff. So I guess the theme for the wheel for me for this video will be growing and expanding, expansion. Okay, so what are a bunch of the ways that a tarot reader can expand? And in fact, I'd even go so far as to say expansion is really important. It's a vital ingredient to just being a human being. Rudolf Steiner can be quoted as saying, it's important to keep the mind facile, to keep learning and growing throughout one's entire life. And one of the ways to do that, to sort of stay young and maintain your curiosity and your interest in things, is to make sure that you're always working on something new, that you're learning something new. Okay, so some ways to expand. Let's see. Reading for new people, especially if you're a relatively new reader and if you're on the edge, or if you've just started reading for people and you've got like a small market or a small group, right? So not uncommon is people will start to read for their friends and their family, sometimes even coworkers. When I started, I was doing a lot of readings just for coworkers, and I let people know through the floor that I worked on in this great big high-rise in New York City that I was doing readings. And oddly enough, I had this weird job with all kinds of downtime where I had to be ready to do graphic design sort of on an emergency notice. Ooh, this pitch book needs a new chart or something, right? So I had to be able to drop everything. So they actually wanted me physically there, but available, right? And then I would dive in, roll up my sleeves, and do a gig heads up, like a crazy, right, to get that thing done, and then I'd knock it out, and then we'd have all this downtime again. So for that particular job, I learned tarot, and I started to read for people in that. People would let me know that they were interested in having a reading. Sometimes they would ask why or ask a question, and then I would type, and I would spend an hour and a half to 3 hours on every single reading, paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs and stuff, and then I'd edit it down so that it was intelligible and useful, and I'd email it off to them. And then we'd talk about it, maybe. So that's how I cut my teeth, right? And then I went to my first convention, and I was surprised to learn that I actually knew my stuff. I knew what I was doing. I could sit down one-on-one with people and read really quite well, and that gave me enough confidence to step out into the world and start reading for new people when I hung up a shingle, right? And then there we go. I was off to the races. So looking for people that are interested in your skills, in your skill set, in your readings, that aren't in the easy demographic. That's one way that you might want to be able to expand. And I think it's important that one do that a lot. Let's see, how am I still doing this now, just as a reader that's got, 25 years or so under his belt as a professional reader? One of the ways is I'm doing more sort of fairs, psychic fairs and things than I have in the past, stepping out that way. And also with COVID, I started reading in Zoom quite a bit more. So my clientele that is at a distance, is much further away from me, has gone up rather than just reading for people within my local area. And the people in my local area, they share a culture with me, right? So the references and things that I use, the way I dress, and all of that sort of stuff is familiar with them. And then when I step out of that and have a Zoom reading with somebody, that's the chances are that I'm going to see someone that behaves or thinks in a way that's quite different from me. It goes way up, right? So I love that. That expands my practice that way. And then reading in new format. So the Zoom readings that's a whole new format. Going to psychic fairs, whole new format. A new one that I started doing maybe 10 years ago at this point is there's a particular yoga and dance studio in a town nearby me, and that town has a giant Halloween parade. So I asked them if they were interested. I said, hey, could I set up a table in your front window? We can put some of your literature out for your classes and things so that we could offer readings for people that were walking by or participating in the great big costume parade that went by the store. That was a whole new situation, a new format. I had to really hone my ability to do very quick readings. I was doing 10-minute readings for those. Haven't done those for a couple of years just because of COVID, but I think I'll go back to them because I loved it. Oftentimes I was reading for people that were not particularly metaphysically aware. So lots of people that were like, oh, that's interesting. You want to get a tarot reading right now as an impulse? And then they run in and do it. And I'm their introduction. I'm their doorway into this kind of approach or this way of thinking. So I really love doing that. So new formats, another way that you can expand. And I would even say if you're looking at reading tarot as a business, stepping into new formats and finding new clientele, that's an important thing that you've really got to be doing all the time in order to keep your business on track and then maybe even grow. A format that I have not done, I don't have any particular interest in it, is doing hotline readings. Lots of tarot readers make a decent amount of money doing this kind of stuff as well. I would highly encourage it if you find that interesting. I just discovered that the speed at which and then the lack of interpersonal connection. I do 60-minute readings, and sometimes we go over, to 90 minutes and whatnot. For that format, that's where I cut my teeth, and that's still today where I am the most comfortable. Love doing that. Oh, one more new format as I started doing tarot parties, and people loved these. So I'm going to offer you this idea. You can take it and put it up and make it work however you do. And here's the way it works is I put out the word and then somebody hosts a tarot party for their friends. Everybody pays a certain amount for a reading, and each person gets a reading. Depending on how many are coming, I might do 15, 20, or even 30-minute readings for each individual. And then everyone else hangs out in the other room and has a party and drinks some wine and gets to know each other. And I've got a separate room set up where I do readings all night long. I sit down and whenever I can, I try to make that like a 4-hour event for me. And then I get a check, and they've collected some money from their friends and stuff. So the host doesn't necessarily have to just be paying for the whole thing that way. That's worked out really nicely. And then our quarantine hit, and those have been called off. But in the relatively near future, or whenever things become safe and comfortable for people to jump back into those will come back up for me for sure. Loved them. Loved doing them. New decks, new spreads. Here's another one, another way to keep expanding. Be careful on this one because tarot can be a bit of a money sink. My collection is probably around 150 or 200 decks, so it's not crazy big like lots of the other professional readers. The collector readers out there that I know have tons more decks than me, but it's big. And a lot of times when I'm talking to new readers, they raise their eyebrows. That being said, I want to say maybe 7 or 8 years ago, I realized that I generally keep between 3 and 6 decks in rotation for the decks that I read with all the time, and the others sit. I don't even often go through them very much anymore, but when I'm designing cards and thinking about that, and I have a moment where I can make a little bit of progress on the deck that I've been working on for a decade, I will go through some of those. I'm like, ooh, what was that one image in that one deck? And I'll dig it out and I'll find it. But I've put a moratorium on buying new decks, and in fact, the Light Seers deck is a rare new deck. I think in the past 7 or 8 years, I've probably only bought maybe three new decks at most, and this is one of them. Okay, let's see what other. Oh, and new spreads. I had talked about new spreads. So designing your own spreads is a big one. I'll probably put a video up that just talks about that at some point. Maybe that'll be a bit of a longer video. So for other tarot off the cuff readers, people that might be interested in becoming a tarot off the cuff reader, I'm looking at putting longer videos in to bury this little comment here into our offering again. So we'll do like sort of 1 hour videos where we can go more deeply into a particular topic. Sometimes they'll involve more than one reader, and sometimes it's just for one person. But new spreads, figuring out new ways to lay those cards down is another nice way to continue to refresh and renew the way you engage with these cards and the way you use them. I have a technique that I use where I don't use spreads at all. I literally throw the cards up into the air, and then they land, and I read where they land and how they got there. Ooh, it looks like that card trying to escape the table and get away from us. It's upside down. It's pretty far away. Let's go take a look at, see what that card is when we turn it over, and we'll interpret that as that's something we're trying to avoid, maybe, or maybe something that's trying to avoid us, right? So I love reading that way. I don't bring it out all that often, but when I'm sitting at a table and I know that there's somebody there that's either playful or fun, or that they might need something to wake them up a bit, that technique definitely comes out. New modalities. Let's end with this one. New modalities. So lots of tarot readers step into other forms. They, people read runes. Lots of astrology and tarot crossover. The one crossover that I do is I Ching. I use the I Ching a lot. I have been using the I Ching since my early 20s, and I didn't get into tarot really specifically as a professional reader until my late 20s. So lots of crossover. So if there are things that other styles of reading or other styles of metaphysical work or counseling or even just gaining wisdom or even art, right? Take a look at those, and you can bring those in and use them together. Let's list some of them. I use the Magpie tarot articles, the Magpie articles sometimes, and I'll throw those down on the deck, and then I'll throw, or down on the table, little objects on the table, and then I'll throw some cards, and I'll read how the cards are relating to the objects that landed on the table. So that's a modality mix that I use, and I also I mix that I Ching, as I mentioned, with tarot quite a bit. I don't do the astrology one because I know how much work and learning that requires of me, and I would have to just wait until I get to a point where I really have the kind of time that I can spend to dig into that deeply. It's super interesting work, and I love the people that use both of those modalities together. There's people that do numerology and birthday work. Runes is another one. Reading tea leaves is things like that. Mediumship in general, and then lots of crossovers with psychology and the medical end of counseling in those arts. So a million ways to go. Why not consider or take a look at, list maybe some of your other hobbies? Oh, I'm a cook. How does cooking and tarot work together? How might those combine? What do they already have in common? What do they struggle? How do they struggle to mesh? And is there a way I can make this work together? That would make some really lovely classes. There's a couple of tarot decks that actually involve food and work with that sort of thing. So there's some really lovely options there just for that one. Or let's come up with one more. Let's say, ooh, I'm a mechanic. I love working with machines and fixing automobiles and tractors and stuff like that. How does that and the tarot mesh? How do those two things interpenetrate each other? I don't know, right? Because that's not one that I do a lot with, but it might be interesting to even come up with ways to use nuts and bolts and tools as a divinatory source, right? Okay, so already I'm starting to think. So think in those terms. If If you like, put down in the comments below. It's been a while since I've been able to comb through my comments. It's been taking me a few weeks sometimes to get to them because this year has been so busy. But I would love to come back and read some of the other modalities that you use, some of the ways that you expand your practice. I'd love to see if there's somebody that's like, oh, this just inspired me to incorporate one of my other hobbies and combine that with the tarot and to see how they work together. I'd love to see that stuff. I hope you're having a great holiday. And I will see you probably towards the new year with some new stuff coming on. Videos are coming down the line each week. And love that you joined us. My name is Kevin Quigley. Thank you for coming to Tarot Off the Cuff. Hi, thanks for watching. This is Kevin Quigley with Tarot Off the Cuff. If you can take a second, click the subscribe button down below. That'll let you know when a new video is posted and you might want to jump over and watch it. If you hit the thumbs up for the videos that you really like, that will help spread the word so new people will find Tarot Off the Cuff in their feed, and that helps the channel grow. That would be great. And if you got a question or a comment, positive or negative, whether you agree or disagree, or if you want to add information or your own take on a particular card or a particular topic, put a comment down below. We would love to hear from you. Thanks so much.